Welcome to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't, a podcast dedicated to helping you create the relationship you truly want.
Team Us, relationship tips to stay aligned, fair, and connected. If you've been feeling a bit disconnected, imbalanced, or just unsure of how to get back in sync with your partner, this episode is for you. Let's explore how to make Team Us not just a nice idea, but a reality you live in your relationship. Whether you've been together for 3 years or 50, keeping your relationship on the same page takes more than love. It takes intention, collaboration, and the ongoing decision to show up as a team. In romantic partnerships, the idea we're in this together can sometimes fade under the weight of daily routines, disagreements, or unspoken expectations. One partner might feel like they're carrying more of the load, emotionally, financially, or logistically. And that imbalance left unchecked can chip away at connection and trust and lead to resentments. That's why today we're diving deep into how couples can bring fairness, mutual respect, and partnership back to the forefront. Teamwork in relationships doesn't mean never arguing or always agreeing. It means staying committed to solving problems together instead of needing to be right and win. Those who love being the top dog and who take up too much of the space need to back up so that those who hide their true feelings can take up more space with their truth instead of going sideways to get their needs met. One of the most overlooked tools in relationships is consideration. Those small, thoughtful actions that say, I see you, I value you. Whether it's giving your partner a break when they're overwhelmed, asking rather than assuming, or simply listening without jumping in to fix it, it's often the little things that build the strongest sense of the us. The us is the third entity in between you and me that deserves more attention. The skill of consideration leaves more room for the us to grow and develop. Staying aligned doesn't happen by accident. It requires check-ins, shared goals, and the humility to course correct when needed. It also means checking your ego at the door and remembering that you're not opponents, you're teammates. And when you remember that, disagreements become opportunities for growth, not ammunition for blame. Today's guest to help us all improve is Carolyn Sharp, LICSW, who is on a mission to create a better world by helping people build better, stronger relationships. People in healthy relationships feel better and get more done, and that is so true. They carry the relationship skills into their workplaces, families, and as parents. Carolyn's work is based on capital letters, PACT, the psychological approach to couple therapy, and offers retreats through Secure Connections Retreats. Her new book, released in January, is Fire It Up, the ultimate resource for a stale relationship. Stop spending time in struggle and disconnection and learn the 4 key steps to building the healthiest relationship possible. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to get to chat with you.
I love that you began your intro with the American ethos of rugged individualism coupled with Hollywood's fairy tale movie plots, always in wealthy homes, by the way, have given most of us the wrong impression of what a healthy relationship is really all about. These cultural messages come through loud and clear. We should be independent and take care of ourselves. I was in a workshop with Canadian Sue Johnson of EFT fame, and she said something close to, you Americans are so obsessed with codependency, and of course, dependency is a part of all relationships. So tell my audience why this is important to understand.
Well, what we are going for in a healthy relationship is interdependency. We are not seeking out full-on dependency where you can't function in your life without checking with your partner, where you are totally dependent on each other for all of every aspect of your life. We're looking at interdependency, where within the relationship, you rely on each other, you can count on each other, where you are each other's emotional home. And that is really the antithesis of codependency, which is, as most know, was founded out of the addiction recovery movement and was first called the co-alcoholic, which is where we are trying to take care of our own fears and insecurities and worries by taking care of another person. I'm worried you're going to drink, so I make everything really nice and easy for you so that the messiness around us doesn't trigger drinking. And so that is what codependency is. People think it's self-sacrifice, and it is being so generous that you're sacrificing your own needs. And that's not what codependency is at all. Codependency is your worry freaks me out, and so I'm going to try and remove your worry so that I'm not so freaked out. And so in a healthy relationship, in an interdependent relationship, we know each other's needs, we know each other's insecurities, and we are proactively creating a system in our relationship where we both feel supported in growing to be our best selves, where we feel challenged by, each other that, hey, I don't think that's working for me. I don't think that's working for you. Let's talk about and create a different system. We're working together interdependently to rely on each other in all the healthy ways so that we can be independent out in the world in the rest of our lives and be as good, as fulfilled, as happy as we can be.
And I think that I love the distinction you're making, because I think one of the reasons I love to do the podcast is that I love the different distinctions that everybody makes as a guest. And I think there isn't enough careful thinking about codependency and interdependency. And I think you're the first person to talk about that. And I think it is a really important thing to understand that people don't even think about. We just use that word so casually and accuse people of being codependent. I really appreciated that. Please define secure functioning in relationships and your 5 principles.
Absolutely. So I learned about secure functioning from my teacher, Stan Tatkin, who founded the psychobiological approach to couple therapy. And Stan helped me learn about this and teaches couple therapists around the world about this, that regardless of what our attachment style is, you can be insecurely attached in an avoidant way or in an anxious way, but together, regardless of what our attachment styles are, we are creating a relationship that is secure functioning, that creates all the principles of secure attachment within our relationship. So it is safe. It is reciprocal. There's the word that I'm looking for. It is mutual. It is fair. It is secure, meaning we can both be our imperfect, messy selves, but in our relationship, we are safe to grow, to challenge each other, like I was talking about, to create that interdependent system where we are becoming our best selves as individuals and creating health in our relationship. So the relationship functions securely, even though we each have our insecurities and our neuroses, if you will. We have our bad behaviors in relation, or troubling, or difficult, or burdensome behaviors in relationship. But within the safety and security of our relationship, we are growing and learning together to do it differently.
And one of my definitions of love is that when you love somebody, you want to be a better person. And when you talk about codependency versus interdependency, it seems to me that that's about being too other focused as well, because you're focused on what will make them best for them. And when you're doing interdependency, it shuttles back and forth between your needs and their needs. And so it doesn't have to be even Steven depending on what's going on, but that shuttling back and forth is what makes it more healthy.
Well, in reality, there isn't the possibility of a healthy relationship without two healthy
Yes.
individuals. And of course, it's not all the time, because I can be struggling and my husband Jeff is helping me with my struggle and is helping me reflect on, is what you're saying really about me? Is it really about us? Or is this an internal struggle to you? And in an interdependent relationship, we're having a process where we're able to discern and tell the difference about, is this your need? Is this my need? Is this our need? We're continually balancing those three. Rather than this, one of the challenges of codependency is it looks like I'm taking care of you. It looks like I'm making this all about you. But in reality, this is all about a need I have that I don't feel safe to express. I don't feel safe to say, you're drinking, you're overworking, your anger, whatever it is. I don't feel safe to challenge you about this and to talk about the impact of your behavior on me. And so I try and manage it in all these end around ways, rather than there being safety in our secure relationship for me to say, hey, I'm struggling with something and I need help figuring out, is this a you problem? Is this a me problem? It's definitely an us problem, because anytime someone is struggling in relationship, both are being impacted.
Yes.
And the relationship is being impacted. So one of the myths I like to break down in my book and in my work with couples is this idea that, well, that's a you problem. Your sensitivity isn't my problem. That's a you problem. Well, if it's impacting you, if my insecurity, for example, causes you to have to calm me down, it is a you problem. You can't just say, not my problem, not my, that's not my emotional issue, so I don't have to deal with it. Well, you do. And you can either do it in a really productive way where we're working together to figure out, where did that come from and how do I contribute to it and what's your responsibility in this? We're making a mess. We're spending time and effort, just not in productive ways.
Yes, I completely agree. Tell us more about why love is not enough and love is not the purpose of a relationship. What can be the purpose of a relationship?
Well, love is not a constant feeling. It's not a constant state that we live in relationship. Anybody who's been married or committed any period of time knows that. We simultaneously feel love and hate, love and disgust, love and all of these things. And I know the Gottmans had done research, and disgust is not something you're quote unquote supposed to feel, but it is something. Emotions are just something we feel from time to time. They're nerve impulses. They're things that happen in our brains, and we don't actually control what we feel. What we do with them, we do have control over. Circling back to what I was originally saying, love is not a constant feeling. We feel a ton of different things. And if we are trying to depend on that as the reason for being, what happens when that feeling isn't present? It's a transitory feeling. Love comes and goes. We feel madly in love with our partner one day, and then they're the most irritating thing we've ever seen on the next day. And when we're irritated by them and don't have contact with that love feeling, if that's what we're waiting for, we're not going to be as motivated to do the work to bring about health in our relationship, to bring back the love feeling. We're just going to be, well, I'm irritated, so now I don't feel like it, so I'm not going to do it. It's just like if we are going to the gym because we love the gym or we feel joy in the gym, you're not always going to feel joy. If joy is why we go to work, you're not always going to feel joyful about your job or about school or a workshop that you're taking. So it's not enough to get us to do the work we need to feel if we're basing it on a feeling. Another purpose would be the outcome we want out of the relationship. We want to become our best selves. We want to live a life of adventure and challenge. We want to create family and community. We want to make the world a better place. There are a million examples. My own purpose in my relationship is to live a life of adventure and challenge where we become the best version of ourselves. That's our purpose in our relationship. And I've mangled some of the words there, but that's the overall feeling, because that helps us stay on the road together of doing the things we need to do to achieve that purpose, to live that purpose. And then from there, we set goals, outcomes, more concrete outcomes that we want, places we want to travel to, places we want to live, things we want to do and achieve together. And then it holds us accountable to doing the work we need to do to achieve them. Because if we're fighting all the time, if we're focused on the stupid stuff of our life, we're not challenging ourselves to be our best selves in the relationship, and therefore we're not going to achieve the things we say we want to achieve.
It's also about thinking long term more than just short term. That and we are all so bad at that. It's one of the things I love about my husband is he's really good at long-term thinking. He saw his business was going to take a dive because of computer stuff years before it happened, and so it long-term thinking is just something we don't do. Clearly, even with all the political turmoil and democracy backsliding, there's really we got to think more long term for our kids with climate change, et cetera. So I like that. I like what you're saying a lot about love because I think it's all true. And I think that's why weddings seem too gooey to me. I want the vows to just be a little bit more. And in years 6 to 10, when we're really sick of each other and scratching our heads going, why are we together? We'll go to therapy and be honest and try to figure out what we've allowed to happen between us. And, and of course that never happens, but maybe someday. Long-term thinking.
Yeah, well, and the number of couples that don't ever really write vows that aren't just, we'll use the ones that are written, or we'll use ones that are really poetic and beautiful, as you say, gooey, and that don't have real meaningful mission statement for their relationship, a defined purpose, would maybe not shock you. Maybe it would shock you. It shocks me typically. And helping couples get clear about that is one of the most powerful things that I do. And then reminding them to reevaluate it, because you get married or you commit, you don't have kids, then maybe you decide to have kids. Your relationship is totally different now. We've just moved across the country a year ago. Our relationship changed pretty dramatically doing that and becoming empty nesters at the same time. We need to reevaluate, is our purpose still the same year 10, year 20, year 30, whatever it is, and what are our goals now? And that having that reevaluation is really powerful to, checking in and making sure we're on the same page about what we want and need from the relationship and from one another.
Yeah, I like the long-term thinking farther than the moment. Please educate my audience with a brief overview of how the brain influences our behavior in relationships.
I appreciate the emphasis on the word brief, because as you can tell,
there's lots.
I'm a big, yes, there's lots to talk about. And, our brain runs the show. It keeps us alive. It keeps us, our heart and lungs and all of that sort of stuff keeps the whole system going. And yet a lot of people haven't thought about how it impacts our behavior and relationship. And there are a number of ways. So to be super brief about
Not super brief. Yeah,
brief.
Because you've got important things to say.
So there's our nervous system. There's the lizard part of our brain that keeps us alive. It keeps our heart regulating and our, blood flowing and all that stuff. It also is continually scanning the environment for threat. And what is threat in our current day-to-day life? It's other humans. Who's the most powerful human in our life? It's our partner. And so our system is scanning continually to see, is there a threat here? And our partner's voice, tone, volume, their facial expression, if they look mad, can send signals to our brain that tells us, there's a threat here. I'm in trouble. You might leave me. You might shame me. Whatever it is, this is all happening at an unconscious level. And partners don't realize that this is happening, and they misunderstand when their partner backs away. It's not because they're rejecting you. It's because they're perceiving something that is scaring them, quote unquote, in some way. And so that's one of the most powerful ways that I help couples recognize this is a big deal. This is happening all the time in your relationship, and it's better to be armed with the knowledge of this so you can know know what to proactively do about this than it is to just be continually reacting to one another. So that's one. The next is all the different areas of our brain and all the different functions impact us as well. Our emotion system center that is interpreting emotion impacts how we perceive our partner and what we want to do about that. The way our prefrontal cortex and how it communicates impacts our relationships. And, most emphatically, I want to share that everybody's brain is different. And there is happily a lot of information coming out about neurodivergence, about how the differences in brain, most commonly between autistic people or people on the spectrum of autism and allistic people, the people that aren't autistic, ADHD, all that sort of stuff. There's lots more information coming out about the differences in the way our brains function, but and so that impacts our brain, but on a more subtle level, whether you're a morning person or an evening person, whether you are a fast processor or a slow processor, and this has nothing to do with intellect. I'm an emotional, I'm a therapist and a coach, and so I live in the world of emotions. I process emotional information very quickly, as I would need to. My husband is a scientist. He's a PhD geologist. He's not, that's not really, he's very good at interpreting the emotions of rocks, but other people, not quite as quick. I'm joking. And if he listens to this, he's going to laugh at me. But he can process data and scientific information and history very quickly, whereas I have to sit and chew on, because I'm terrible with science and math, I have to chew on it for a minute for it to make sense to me. That difference between our brains can cause us great difficulty, except I know about it and he knows about it. And so I slow down when I'm giving him emotional feedback about how I'm feeling or how I think he's feeling. He slows down when he's giving me information about science or money, numbers, anything like that, because my brain doesn't process it that quickly. And so for couples to learn about the ways their brains are different helps them ward off problems, and it helps them understand their problems better so that they're not freaking out about, oh, we can't get along about money. Well, maybe it's because your brain processes money differently.
Yeah, that's great. Please explain the 3 components of healthy agreements. How can we be more sensitive along with a willingness to be fair with our partners to create healthy agreement? I'm a big fair person.
Fairness is critical in a secure functioning relationship. It has to be fair. It has to be mutual and reciprocal, because otherwise things fall out of balance and people grow resentful and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So agreements are sort of the third part of building that foundation, where we have a purpose, we have goals, and then we have agreements. And the agreements help us fulfill those goals and that purpose. And so to create agreements that work, we need to make them explicit. So we need to talk about them and understand them, because lots of couples have these implicit agreements that, we're monogamous, for example. That's a really powerful one. They assume we're monogamous, but they've never actually talked about it. So the first component of those 3 is the what. What is the agreement? What is it? What do we want to have be an agreement in our relationship? We tell each other everything. We're kind to one another. We don't go to bed mad, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What is the agreement? And being clear in defining what that agreement is. That's number 1 most important thing. The why to the agreement. Why is this important to each of us and our relationship? Why do we need this agreement? That's another one that couples don't often do. They don't know why monogamy or polyamory is important to their relationship. Why are we going to do this? Without that why, we're going to fall down in following through on it, because we don't understand why it's important to our partner, to us, and to our relationship. And then the how. How do we do this so that it works for you, for me, and for us? Because every agreement is challenging in some way. If it's a good agreement, if it's worth doing, it's a bit challenging. We need to know, how are we going to do this? How does it work for us to be monogamous? Does that mean I can't talk to another man at a party? Who is it was Mike Pence, that he was never alone with another woman at a party.
That's right.
Why?
Yes, I forgot about
And
that.
how does that work in reality? If we're not explicit about that, if we don't know how it's going to work, it's going to fall down. And so the what, the why, and the how are critical. And I walk couples through, and I have an exercise in the appendix about how to create agreements so that they're agreements that actually work. And when agreements don't work, it's because one or both of those or multiple of those is missing from an agreement for a couple.
And it could take time to make the agreement really work, because maybe things happen along the way that you've got to reframe it and renegotiate.
Absolutely.
You define oxygen in a relationship as full support and acceptance of each other, which is dependent on the understanding of who we are as people. Explain what this means in real life terms, and how can we get there?
I always start by defining what this is not, because that's what often hooks people, gets them agitated about what I'm saying. It does not mean liking the thing that we're accepting. It doesn't mean agreeing with it, that we are on the same page about something, and it doesn't mean we're colluding with it. So when people hear me talk about full acceptance, they think I'm saying that it's okay that my partner yells, or I have to be okay and totally on board with the fact that they continually leave the seat up on the toilet, or whatever it is. Acceptance is about seeing our partner as a whole person, about their better self and who they are striving to be, and accepting them as a person, inclusive of some challenging behaviors. And I'm drawing on this notion of radical acceptance, which is sort of a Buddhist mindfulness term, which is about accepting things that are unacceptable, like a cancer diagnosis, for example, that we don't really actually have any control over this reality, that this thing is real. And so we don't really have any choice but to accept it. And that acceptance creates a peacefulness that allows us to work with something differently. Too often with couples, they're trying to change their partner. And as so many of us know or have learned over life, the one thing you can't do is change another person. You can only change yourself. But we make ourselves crazy, and we destroy the safety and security of our relationship by trying to change our partner. And so acceptance is the opposite of that. I am accepting who you are as a person. I'm recognizing I don't like this behavior or this behavior, but I accept you. And through accepting you, I can create the safety and security for us, for you and for us, to look at a behavior that might be challenging for me. So I can say, I don't like that you did that. I can say that it hurts me that you did that. I can say that this makes me feel scared or insecure in our relationship that you did this or that. And then together we can look at it together, saying together a lot, and work on what would be better for our relationship, for you and for me. But that acceptance is about understanding who you are and why, how you're wired, and why you operate the way that you do, why you behave the way that you do, so that I can understand it from a bigger picture rather than just over focus on you do that is wrong, and that makes you bad. And then my partner feels threatened by that and is not going to be in a safe place to even examine it, because then they're defensive.
And you have to love me the way I am. It keeps that loop of being stuck, and it just doesn't shift. And what you're describing is, you've got to start using your emotions, but also balancing it with thinking, and then trying to see how the two of you together can build something different. But it takes a lot of talking. What do you do with a partner who doesn't want to talk?
It's a great question. What I do with partners when they have someone who doesn't want to talk is understand, what is it about talking that is problematic for you? What happens for you when we talk? Because again, it comes from, there's a source in that. Every human behavior has a need that it is attempting to meet. So a refusal to talk or a resistance to talking is an attempt usually to keep oneself safe. I don't feel safe actually talking, because every time I talk, you interrupt me. Every time I talk, you tell me I'm wrong. Every time I talk, you roll your eyes, you shut down, you get mad, you react negatively. And so you tell me you want to talk, but then your behavior tells me you don't actually want me to talk, or you only want me to say the things you want me to say. So often when a couple, there's someone who doesn't like to talk, there's a reason for it. And so I coach people and work with people to get really curious about what happened. Has this always been true? If that is truly real and has always been real in a relationship, used to be something that you liked about your partner. You got together and they didn't talk in the beginning and it didn't bother you. Now you don't like that they never talk. So the rules of the game have changed here, and we need to look at that. And that is something that is so common. What is cute and endearing to our partner when we're falling in love with them becomes a liability later.
It does.
You used to be the life of the party, and I used to love that. Now I'm embarrassed by it. Okay, what happens here? And there's brain science behind all of that I could nerd out on and go down the rabbit hole, but I'll stick to the question you're asking me.
Okay. So how does attachment's on a spectrum, and what is it we need to know about ourselves with attachment?
Well, in truth, attachment is really more of like an orb. It's more of like it exists in a free floating
Yes,
sphere.
and it depends on where you are and what's going on. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes.
The human brain likes the binary much more than it likes the non-binary, the sort of more nuanced aspect. And so I want to emphasize that as much as I'm describing it on a spectrum, it's much more complex than that. But there are three main attachment types with a fourth that is sort of floating in space somewhere. And the spectrum goes from secure in the middle and then two versions of insecure. And this is where people see it as a binary. You're either securely attached or you're insecurely attached. And it's really much more complicated than that because it's about an attachment style. And attachment style is how we were trained, how we experienced relationship, and therefore how we learned to be in relationship. And we learned that through how we were parented and whether we were, and this is sort of how I frame it, it's framed a million different ways by a million different experts, Sue Johnson being, one of them that frames it in a really beautiful way, Stan Tatkin being my favorite way of framing it. And so on one side of insecure attachment, you have avoidant, and that is someone who was maybe underparented, who didn't quite get enough parenting attention, focus on them, and so they learned to take care of their emotional needs on their own. Maybe they only got attention when they were perfect, when they achieved, and so they are continually looking for the evidence that they're okay in relationship, and other than that, they're taking care of themselves. So too much contact to a person who is on the avoidance side of secure is going to be really overstimulating. And I'm on the avoidance side of things. I'm sort of secure, avoidant-ish, and all of them are ish. You're secure-ish, you're avoidant-ish, or on the other side of the spectrum, you're anxious-ish.
Yes.
And anxious is someone who was maybe over-parented a little bit. There was a little bit too much contact, or the parent was getting their emotional needs met through the child, and so the child had sort of a helicopter-ish parent over them, and so they got their emotional needs met entirely through relationship and didn't learn how to sort of regulate themselves. And so that's how they know they're safe in relationship. That's how they feel safe, is in much closer contact. So knowing this about ourselves to get to that was a very crude definition of things. There's so much more to say about attachment styles, but I'll leave it at that for now. To know this about ourselves helps us understand how we learn to be in relationship, how we understand relationship, how we feel best, how we feel worse, what triggers us into feeling upset, what triggers us into feeling safe and understood. And so knowing this and knowing our partner's attachment style, we can understand very easily, very quickly, why we have disconnect and why we have friction. Because if I am avoidant, as I said I am, and I need like alone time to regulate myself, and my partner is more on the anxious side, which he is, and needs more contact to regulate himself, you can see where friction would come up, because early on when we were together, he would come to hug me when I was upset. And a hug is not what I need when I'm upset. I need like a little bit more space. When he's upset, he needs a hug. And so I would go to leave him alone when he was upset, and he would come to hug me. And I was like, what are you doing? And then he would feel rejected because he needs contact to regulate him, and I need to be able. And so we would go in this like chase, avoid, chase, avoid, chase, avoid dance in a pretty mild way, but upsetting nonetheless, until we figured out, oh, this is what is happening. And the challenge comes up because in our courtship, we're not necessarily acting as our attachment style is necessarily. So we mistake, oh, he's he's securely attached, I'm secure, we're all good. And then we start living together, or we make a commitment to each other, and then the real stuff starts showing up. And then we see it and we go, what's happening? Why are you running away from me? Why are you suffocating me? All of these things start happening and we don't understand. So learning about your attachment style and your partner's attachment style helps you bypass a lot of the struggles.
And it helps with those distinctions of understanding how you're different from each other, so that you can more accurately connect with each other. And it's a lot of great information. We create balance through mutuality or reciprocity. Tell us, how does that get improved when it may be lacking? I especially loved your 2 questions I did for creating balance, so I'm hoping you will include them as part 2 of this question.
For sure. So, as I talked about a little bit already, mutuality and reciprocity are critical in a secure functioning relationship. In a healthy relationship, you need it to both feel good about things. And in reality, we are balancing between 3, competing needs. Couples often just think about your needs versus my needs, when in reality, there's a third entity that has its own needs, which is the relationship's needs. And so in creating mutuality and reciprocity, we're sort of really going between all 3. Do you have what you need to feel secure, loved, and like you need to go out into the world and feel like you can tackle the world? Do I have it? And does our relationship have it, so that we feel in connection to the optimum amount that our relationship needs? When that is lacking, there are lots of bellwethers, the canaries in the coal mines, things that start going on. When Jeff and I are out of balance, we get a little bit snarky with each other. We're not doing as much together, all that sort of stuff. And so he or I will recognize that and go, hey, I think things are a little funky. So the first piece of what you want to do is really have awareness of what your relationship looks like when it's doing well, and what your partner looks like when they're at their best. They feel their best in the relationship. And that's the questions that I get to in talking about it, that you're alluding to. What are the habits and hobbies your partner is getting to do when they're happiest, both outside the relationship and in the relationship? What are they doing when they feel loved and supported, when they feel accepted by me? And when they're struggling, when they're not as happy in the relationship, what are the signals that tell me they're not feeling as happy and supported in the relationship? And so to be continually sort of reflecting on that, and have sort of your cue cards of what it looks like when our relationship falls out of balance, when my partner doesn't feel as supported, it helps me go, okay, we need to readjust things. So awareness is the first thing. And then to know what are the things that our relationship needs, what are the things my partner needs, and apply them. Then you have your plan of how to get it back. And all of this depends on there being enough safety in the relationship for me to be able to speak to, hey, I don't think things are going as well as they need. And this usually goes better if I'm tending to my partner's needs. It elicits less defensiveness if I am checking in, like, it doesn't look like you feel as good as we like it that you feel. So let me check in what you need more of to go back into feeling balance. The trick here is that often when things fall out of balance, if we don't have awareness, if we're not like training ourselves to be looking for this, it'll trigger that survival mechanism that we go to, where then when I'm in my pro-survival way, I'm in a pro-self anti-relationship way. And so then I'm more naturally going to go into the self-care, take care of self way. And that moves me away from tending to the needs of the relationship.
Yes, I think it's so important to, I would actually sometimes take a jar or something and stick it in the middle of the room and say, there's you and there's you, but there's the us, and I'm here to take care of the us. And unless you're taking me home in your back seat of your car, you need to start thinking about this us. So that's why this jar is here. I'm trying. It's not me. It's you guys have to learn this because it really is important. It's just such a good thing.
And it exists in every relationship we're in, from colleagues, neighbors, everything. There's my needs, there's the other person's needs, and then there's our relationship needs. I mean, anybody that you're in a consistent, ongoing relationship, those three entities are always existing. And so looking at that in that framework, I find really helpful for everybody.
Yes. When couples have not been a team or valued being a team, how can that change and evolve into becoming a skill?
Well, this may be an annoying answer, but practice is really the way.
I love practice.
And
I'm always telling people, just do it for some practice. It's
well, and the name itself, like how can it become a skill? A skill is developed through practice. And relationship skills are skills. Communication skills are skills, and they have to be practiced. And many of us did not get good practice. In that attachment style thing, how we were trained to be in relationship, we're probably really good at one thing. I am fantastic at taking care of myself. I am not so fantastic at receiving care from others. I'm a therapist, I'm a professional skill, caretaker. I take care of people for a living.
I think that's
so
true
I'm
for
real good at it.
Majority of us.
Right. Receiving care, not so good at it. I have to practice, and I have had to practice because Jeff insists on taking care of me, that jerk, insists on being kind to me. And so I've had to practice like taking it in and being calm about it, not freaking out, like we have to practice. So practice is the way that we become a better team. We first have to sort of define, what does being in a team mean to you? What does a good team mean to you? What examples do you have of good versus not good? And so what does that mean? What skills do you think you have that will help our team? What skills do you think you're lacking that is going to be a challenge for you? So defining our terms helps us get really clear about what we need to practice, what support do you need to get better at that skill? Everybody takes feedback differently, letting me know, like, how do you like feedback? All of that sort of stuff, getting clear about our terms really helps us get an understanding of what it's going to take. When it's working, what does it look like? So that we know the benchmarks of how we'll know that we're a better team. Being clear about our goals and our purpose helps us. Those are all the things. And so recognizing, again, having awareness that I don't think we're a good team. I don't feel supported by you. All of that sort of stuff is really helpful. And a lot of these metaphors, couples find really powerful in helping them identify it. The other thing I would say that I do a lot, as you probably noted in the book, is to normalize the struggle. Because it's difficult for everybody. Relationships, intimate, committed relationships, are the hardest thing we do as adults, because you're walking around living with a mirror. You're trying to meet your own needs and your partner's needs and the relationship's needs all at once, and it's not easy. Despite what Hollywood says, it is not easy. It doesn't just happen naturally. It takes work, consistent work.
And attention.
And that can be fun. Yeah, and attention and care and feeding, using a gardening metaphor, using an exercise, whatever metaphor works for you. Anything worth doing well takes work.
I agree. I also loved your 4 questions about how to explore what your relationship needs, which is all about learning to think about the us. So could you share those?
Yes. What is happening between you when your relationship is at its best is number 1. Number 2, what habits, activities, rituals, and traditions are present? What are we doing on a regular that is feeding our relationship? What is the time together and time apart ratio? What is the right balance there of time together and time apart? And again, depending on whether you have too avoidant style attachment or too anxious style attachment, that's going to be different for every couple. And there's not one right way to do that. Depends on each individual. And then what does communication consist of and look like for us? And again, there's not one definition. You're not going to find one definition of health in that, because it depends on, it's like snowflakes. And I don't mean that in the derogatory term of a liberal. I mean that in the sense of, snowflakes, everyone is different. So every relationship is different. And you and your partner get to define what health and healthy communication looks like for the two of you.
Tell us about the 3 processes always involved in the dance of communication.
Okay. And these are 3 processes that are present in every aspect of relationships, in truth. The first is the tension between survival and connection. We have 2 competing drives at all times. The drive biologically to survive, to keep our system upright and going, to keep ourselves safe. And then we also have an equal but totally opposite need to connect. We need other people, we need connection. And the tension between those 2 drives are continually operating. And knowing what it looks like when my partner has flipped into survival drive, when they're defensive, when they're upset, knowing what that looks like and recognizing that as a biological reality helps us. And what it looks like when they're seeking connection. Babies reach their arms out, or babies do things. Every human has these things that we do when we're seeking out connection. So that's number 1. That's the number 1 process. Number 2 is our partner serves as a proxy or a stand-in for everybody who came before. This goes to our attachment style, so how we were trained to be in relationship. And so how we communicate is how we were taught to communicate. How we receive communication is how we were taught to receive and interpret communication. Maybe I hear everything as criticism. Maybe you don't hear criticism at all. We might have a challenge there. So we serve as the stand-in for everyone that we were trained by. And then there are 3 of us in a relationship. There's you, there's me, and there's a relationship. And so in communication, your needs in that communication, my needs in the communication, and what our relationship needs for that communication are always present. And so those 3 dynamics are continually happening in relationship, in communication, in relationship, in everything. And so if we're talking about money, that works as money may be really scary for you, and that may tip you into survival about money, and you may really panic and hoard money or want to hoard money. What you were taught about money, what money means to you, you inherited from your family, whether you grew up poor and therefore money is a scary resource that you have to save, or you grew up in wealth and so money is something that you can just do anything with and it doesn't matter, as well as the meaning money has to each of us, whether it's our identity, whether it's just a thing, whether it's a social construct. Everything was trained in us, and so we need to understand that. And then for communication around money, again, there are 3 of you. There's your beliefs and needs around money. There's my beliefs and needs around money and preferences around money. And then there's what our relationship needs. If we have goals to save and buy something, that's our shared goal around money. So that's just using money as an example of the 3 dynamics that are continually present.
Yeah, and I like because I was kind of envisioning these 3 triangles twisting and turning on 3 different levels, but it gives it demonstrates that complexity. And I think we do have this need to simplify too many things when what we really need is attention to nuance and detail and really understanding where the other person is coming from, instead of making often negative assumptions, What have you covered? And if you want to do the geek out brain stuff, I'd be fine with it. What have you not covered you'd like to share before we wrap up?
You, as I said before we started, you did such a fantastic job of covering the high points of my book. I think you've covered most of the areas that I'm passionate about talking about, but really emphasizing how critical connection and relationship is to our health and our mental health, our productivity. Because when, on a day when you've had a fight with your partner and you go to work, you're going to be ruminating on that. You're going to be worrying about it. You're going to be you're going to be agitated and irritated. You're going to be less productive. So, in the principles, which I don't think I named, so I can go back and name those because we
Oh,
got
that's right. Yeah.
off topic.
Yeah.
So in building these principles, these aspirational principles for building a healthy relationship, lots of people have reactions to them because they think I'm promoting codependence or self-sacrifice or giving yourself up completely. And really, it's about building a system where you can go out in the world and be your most productive self, because when we are confident, when we feel secure in our relationship, we can get more done. We can be more creative, both in our at-home relationship and for people that aren't in a romantic relationship at work. If you're in conflict with a colleague, you're not going to be as productive with that colleague. You're not going to trust them, so maybe you're going to withhold information, or you're going to, choose your words in a weird way because you don't feel comfortable saying what you want to say. Maybe they're going to steal your ideas, or maybe they're going to, insult you, or whatever it is. You don't have the safety and confidence to be creative with that person. And so it really behooves us to work on our relationships so that we feel better in our life. So I'll rename those 5 principles, which is our relationship is the most important component of our well-being, which I've just talked about, to say, when our relationships are messed up, we don't feel as well. And there is science to back this up. There's studies about this,
Yes,
that
there are.
relationship health really influences all of these areas of our well-being. And it doesn't mean like people want to make this hierarchical, that you should not do anything until your relationship is at its healthiest. And the analogy I make is that, you brush your teeth first in the morning. Does that mean it's the most important thing in your whole life? No, but it's something you never go without doing. We make time for lots of things, and we tend to put our relationship last as the thing that can just wait. And that is the thing that I'm most passionately on the mission to say: don't let your relationship fall to the very last thing on your agenda, because the rest of your life will suffer. So that's principle number 1. Our relationship is a unique system with distinct needs to function well. So that's about, those 3 entities. It's its own organism, and it has its own needs: time, attention, care, feeding, communication, affection, whatever it is. Our relationship has these different things that it needs, and you need to attend to it. So that's number 2. Number 3 is, and this is the one I always get the most strong reaction, we put our partner's well-being above our own. And this is just talking about in relationship. This isn't, I make sure my partner has their dry cleaning and their lunch packed. And, it's not about taking care of all of their needs. It's talking about their relationship needs first. Because otherwise we end up in a competition for whose needs get to go first. Me, 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 me.
That's
and
true.
It tends to build competition, whereas focusing on, you need hugs first thing when I get home. If I hug you first, there's more spaciousness, there's more generosity, there's more love. If I take care of your need first, you have more capacity to take care of my needs. So building a culture of generosity where I love you not because you demand it, but because I want you to feel loved in the relationship. It fuels positivity and connection in a way that doing it the other way does not, and creates competition and one-upmanship and scorekeeping and all of the things that doesn't work. So that's number 3. Number 4, the safety and well-being of our relationship is founded on fairness and justice. So this gets at, we need to do this reciprocally, mutually. So I can't take care of your needs if you're not also taking care of my needs. This needs to be a fair and balanced and mutual system in order for this to work. And then finally, we promote each other's growth through total acceptance. I want you to grow and be your best self. You being late all the time isn't your best self. The best way to get you to work on that is for you to be accepted by me as a person, to recognize the whole being, that you're not trying to be inconsiderate by being late, that you're really trying to meet everybody's needs at work and not be rude in traffic getting home, and so you're late. I see it as a whole picture. I recognize that your lateness is challenging for me, but I accept you as a person. Doing so helps create the room where you're actually willing to look at that and do things differently.
All right. Wow. Please remind my audience of the title of your book and website and anything else you want to mention.
Sure. So my book is called Fire It Up: 4 Secrets to Reigniting Intimacy and Joy in Your Relationship. And it is designed and written for couples, but it really does teach you things that you can use in all of your relationships. And you can use it before you're in relationship or after you've left the relationship and learn about what maybe went wrong in your relationship. And it is available anywhere books are sold, in ebook, audiobook, or paper copy. So you can get it in a big conglomerate, or you can get it at your independent bookstore. Bookshop.org has it. All of those links are available on my website, which is secureconnectionsretreats.com, where I run a course for couples that sort of teaches people through slides and me talking and exercises how to use the book, how to apply the book. And then I also take people on retreats in Tuscany, and I'm doing a retreat at Kripalu. So all of the things that I offer are available on my website.
All right. You don't have to be perfect teammates. You just have to keep showing up and remembering who you're playing with, not against. And on the rough days, remind yourselves you're not enemies. You're two tired people trying to agree on what show to watch. So glad you listened today. Thanks so much. I'm also on TikTok at Rhoda on Couples.
Thank you for listening to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't. If you have enjoyed the show, please leave a rating and review on iTunes and help get the word out. To learn more or connect with Rhoda, visit therapyideas.net.